Hey guys, welcome to my podcast, Coming Clean. I'm your host, Kylie Lewis, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Hey guys, welcome back to Coming Clean. This is episode number 81, and I'm here with my guest, Miranda. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. We've been trying to make this work out for probably a couple of months now.
Yeah.
And life happens.
Exactly.
And luckily, we both were trusting of that, and we just let it happen as it should. So here we are today.
Yes.
Exactly.
And I'm grateful for you being so patient.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I know that, first of all, this is the first time we've met in person. I've been following you on Facebook. I know some things about you, whatever you share on Facebook. So I know you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a business owner, you're a yoga instructor. You do a lot in the community. But what is it that you'd want to share with people to kind of give a brief overview of what you currently do in your life?
What I'm currently doing is trying to boost my business, the Calm Company Wellness and Yoga. We opened last June, and we're actually having our official open house this June 12th. So that is what I'm currently working on, and then just supporting all the people that work there and relaunching my classes that I've had to open, then close, and open, then close. So yeah, so just focusing on my specializations, which is a prenatal yoga teacher, working with kids in the schools and in my studio, family yoga, and restorative yoga.
Right.
And just mindful yoga. Just, I guess, the unexpected yoga when people walk into a studio, and that's what they call you for is, am I capable of doing yoga? And you're like, okay, what are you talking about? I'm not going to teach you a back bend today. I'm not going to teach you how to stand on your head. So really educating people that there's not just one way to do yoga. There's several ways to do yoga.
I love that. Very cool. So I didn't realize how new the Calm Company was.
Yes.
1 year or less than a year.
Yeah, it's not even
Coming
a year.
Up on a year.
Yes, it's not even a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I know that you found yoga, which obviously then led you to want to open the business. So how did you discover yoga? Like, what kind of led you there? And I ask because I know I found yoga because I wanted to be fit. I wanted to be well, but I also didn't want to punish my body anymore. I didn't want to run on a treadmill just to lose weight or burn calories.
Yeah.
And so I found yoga, and it felt like it felt like to me that it was more like you said, restorative, and it was more for my mind, really. It helped me slow down. It helped me be present, and it helped me start to build a healthier relationship to my body. So I found yoga out of pain, really, of hitting a breaking point of this type of movement, this intention of movement no longer works for me. So I need to find something new. And that's when I stepped into yoga. So what led you into practicing yoga yourself?
Well, I didn't know about yoga until I was away at school in San Francisco. And I had a stressful life, just even as young as, well, we won't get into that, but when I went away to college, I was working 2 jobs, one full-time, one part-time, just to pay my way through school and pay rent out in San Francisco.
Right.
So I feel like I was always stressed out as a student, like trying to get my work done and then working, and then I just loved volunteering too. So I was also doing that. I was really active. And then my brother said to me, you know what, why don't you come to a yoga class with me? And I had no idea what that was all about, but I was really open to exploring, and there was just so much that I was learning in San Francisco that I was just like, okay, let's do it. And so I went to a free class in San Francisco at an ashram, and thankfully I didn't have to pay anything, and actually the room had a rug in it. It was just totally what you don't expect to see, but very traditional. It's a very traditional yoga center. And we did hatha yoga. And I loved it. It just made me feel really calm. Not once did I think I was there for fitness. Not once. I was just like, oh my God, this is really nice. I felt like I was hiking, I was walking, I was taking a bus. I was actually in dance in college. So fitness wasn't on the top of the list when I walked into that place. It was just relaxation and just learning to be independent and survive.
Yeah.
So that's how I found it. And then it just kind of followed me throughout my whole life. In my profession, I still kept up doing yoga. When I came back here and I moved, I went to the Y, and I was actually really fortunate. There were 2 people there that were teaching, and they had just come from India. They were trained in India. So I felt really fortunate to be taking yoga actually for a year and a half from them. And then they ended up moving to the East Coast. But I felt like I learned a lot from them. And even then, it was still for relaxation. I would do it twice a week. And so again, it was just something that I always turned to. And then eventually, I did turn to it for fitness. When I found more of a power yoga, I was like, oh my God, this is so addicting. But in the end, I realized that wasn't really what I needed. I needed to go back to the slower yoga because that was good for me mentally. I didn't really feel like in the end the power yoga was something that I was running away from. I was running away from anxiety, stress, and just facing my fears. Mm-hmm. But I learned when I slowed down, it was healthier for me.
Okay, so let's go there because I saw something you posted within the last day or two, and it talked about that slowing down and how actually when we slow down, which I think most people would agree is the hardest and scariest thing to do when it comes down to it, is to slow down and do nothing. Because we're really good at distracting ourselves. We're really good at fighting through and pushing through and becoming busier and just going, right? And the moment you slow down is when you start to feel things. And so you made a post that I'd love for you to elaborate on, which was you were in a yoga class and it was the end and you were kind of laying there in meditation and you felt almost an emotional trigger of some kind.
Yes, I became.
And that was scary for you.
It was very scary.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know what just happened, but I felt like I was fearing for my life. And I got up and I just was full of anxiety, like on the brinks of a panic attack. And at that point, I had already had a panic attack in my life. So I was just like, okay, I know what to do with this. So it never led to a panic attack, but it led to being just panicked constantly. And I was like, what on earth just happened? So I'm like, I don't ever want to be on a mat again. I don't ever want to experience what I just experienced. But then it followed me. I never got rid of that panicky feeling.
So did you then stay away from yoga for a while because of that?
For 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I felt like I was talking to my therapist all the time, trying to explore this feeling. But then I also realized that the more I spoke, the more I was reminded of what was happening in my head, what I was scared of. So I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. But, it's like, okay, if you're going to tell that to a therapist, they're going to say, well, then you need to stay. So then I just had to learn my own tools. It's like, okay, yoga does not end with a pose. I'm going to go back. It doesn't end with meditation and visualization. I still have my mantras, my affirmation. I still have breathing exercises. I don't have to go into my head that much. I don't have to go into my body that much. And I just kept doing that every single day. And throughout the day, anytime I would get scared, I would ask myself, what exactly are you scared of? What do you think is going to happen? And it worked. And so I would continuously face my fear, even though I was so scared. And I remember my therapist saying, okay, let's talk about this situation. Let's talk about the trauma. And I'm like, no. And I'm like, I can't believe she's asking me to do this. Like, what person in their right mind would ask somebody to relive a traumatic experience? And I knew what she was doing. It was exposure. But I just didn't like recreating the experience. But then when I did it, the self-talk myself through breathing, I was able to overcome it. And so that lasted probably, that talking to myself, probably lasted a good 6 months. And then 6 months after that, throughout, it would like perk up again, and
the fear.
And I'd be like, I know you. Like, I tamed it. Like, get down. You're not taking control of my life. So it just really took just getting to know myself and connecting with myself. And so things changed after that.
So then you revisited yoga because you felt like you were mentally and emotionally equipped.
Yes.
To kind of step back into what most people would be like, oh, that's the easy part, right? Yoga is it's just like soft and calm, but you're like, that is like the battleground because you have to literally face yourself because you're going so slow that you're with your thoughts. And that's from my own experience as well, and with others, it's like if we continuously move and we continuously push and do, whether that's power yoga or running, lifting weights, all these things can be really powerful to release energy. But if we don't actually face the emotional debt that's been building up for years, it goes unnoticed in a way. And sometimes we don't even know that it's there till you slow down enough to let it bubble up to the surface. And it's terrifying when it does.
Exactly. And so from there, I kind of felt like, well, I'm going to teach in a trauma-informed way, because you never know who's going to come in your door. And to be honest with you, I have taught in a way that's been trauma sensitive, and then somebody will say something and I notice somebody's been triggered after class, even though I just led a trauma sensitive yoga class. I'm like, wow, because I went up to that person, I'm like, is something wrong? Yeah, so-and-so, that person over there mentioned something that really triggered me. So we can say that we are going to create a safe space for you, but there's so much we just don't know still.
Right.
And we'll never know. We don't know what people come in with. So all we can do is do the best we can.
So can you give us some examples? Because I read that too, that you said you're trauma sensitive and you know now what to say to yourself and maybe to your students that come in. So can you give us an example of maybe something specific that you say or do that is trauma sensitive? That meaning, like, it's when you're saying it, you're thinking, what could someone possibly be going through right now? How could I possibly try to soothe or prepare someone or myself for a trigger, right? Because it's inevitable that people will feel things, ourselves included.
Yes.
But what are some things that you say to yourself or your students that kind of help prepare or guide them through that?
Well, first of all, before I even get into what I will say, like, okay, let's just sit with the thought. And this is very common for yoga teachers. Say, don't engage the thought, don't create stories out of thought. And I will say that, even though it is a common thing. And that was said to me, but it's human nature. I am going to elaborate on this story right now, because it's also we're trying to just be in a safe place when we create these stories, because we think if we create these stories, then it's really not going to happen. But to get back to what you were saying, I first tell them this is a safe environment. Look around and look at all the faces. And depending where I teach, because I don't always teach in my studio, I will get people in a circle so they can all see each other. So often if somebody's been sexually abused, physically abused, and if there's a man behind them, like they might be scared.
Yeah.
Or just the experience of walking in a studio and having a male sitting behind them.
Right.
Okay, there's somebody sitting behind me. And even just like assisting people, like asking people, can I assist you?
Oh, when you put your hands on people.
At any point.
Right.
At any point, because that person may not like touch. However, sometimes people that are going through experiences need to know that we're there for them. So that's not always the case. Somebody might want to be touched because it's the only touch they're receiving.
Gosh, it's so complicated.
I know, it really is. So I feel like the training does not stop for me. Even though I was trained, I'm always going back to, okay, how can, when I have time, how can I be more informed? Because it seems like something's always coming up. First, you're not supposed to call your class a trauma-sensitive yoga class. Then they say it's okay to call your class a trauma-sensitive. So, again, I just went to a training a couple weeks ago, and I was really glad that my teacher said, you know what, it's impossible to create a completely safe yoga class. And that just took so much off of me. So all we can do is be prepared and try our best.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, but it comes a lot, going back to what you asked, it comes a lot to the way we cue words. Let's see if we can go deeper. Not appropriate. Let's open our legs. Not appropriate. So sometimes it slips out because I'm trained traditionally, just going to a yoga training. That's the way the majority of yoga trainings that you go to are teaching.
Right.
Unless you go to, and that's rare if you go specifically. It's being talked more, but you have to go seek out the additional training. Yeah,
that's so interesting. I love talking about this because I currently am teaching workshops for women, and I've only recently started to dive into that, and I was teaching painting classes for 4 years, so I learned through the 4 years of teaching painting classes different ways to speak, different ways to cue, whether that is guiding someone through, because, there were emotional things that came up through painting, which was just fascinating to me. I mean, the inner critic is so strong in the story and the judgment before you even touch your canvas.
Yes.
You think your painting sucks, right? It's
exactly. And you're scared to put the brush to the canvas.
Yeah. Exactly. And then you meet the mistake that you think you made and you don't know how to push through. So there's so much there that I learned, which I'm so grateful for. But now that I am, and I almost just said it, like a phrase I say a lot, which obviously in these cases, maybe they're different, but they're not though, right? Because they're humans. I always say let's dive deep, right?
Yeah.
And you just said that. You said dive deeper. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, wait, I didn't even think of it like that. And I'm dealing with, we're doing workshops on healing the inner child.
And that one's hard. When I saw that one, I'm like, ooh, that one's going to be a hard one.
It was, it was a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I felt physically hungover the next day just from the energy. But it was also really powerful. And there was a lot of, I feel there's a lot of release and a lot of just, I don't know how to explain it, but we did a guided meditation that, we were all crying through the guided meditation because you feel an actual energy shift when you are able to be with yourself. And I know that you've experienced this, I'm sure, with yourself and with your students. But I'm glad that you brought this to my attention just so I can be a little bit more or a lot more aware of the way that I'm speaking, which I think I already am, but I'm like, there's more. There's always more.
Yeah, and I feel like, research is saying that in a power flow class, like a regular, typical vinyasa class where you're not stopping, it's just, and I never thought about that. Just like you don't even have time to think. So that is like the perfect class that somebody that's anxiety-ridden wants to go to because they don't want to face themselves. Yeah. And that's also the perfect class to get triggered at the end, which is what I experienced.
Okay, so yours was at the end of a fast-paced.
Oh, yeah, but it was always in my head. Now, so, when you start off in yoga and you're quiet and you're just warming up your body, and in my head, when I'm warming up my body and the teacher is still going slow, I'm like, come on, back then, come on already, I'm tired of this, I don't want to think anymore. Let's get moving. Let's start sweating here. Yeah. And then that was my happy place because I didn't have to think.
The movement.
Yes. And I didn't want to stop. Just keep flowing. And at the end, during Shavasana, during relaxation is when I was triggered.
Right.
Because it's going to catch up to you. And it did. So in many ways, I'm grateful that happened because I wouldn't be where I'm at today.
Totally. Yeah. So let's talk about then where you are today, meaning I know you said that you go into schools and you work with kids at your studio, and outside of your studio, you are really focusing in on prenatal yoga as well. So why, and I'm sure being a mom yourself has something to do with it, but why this specific focus on prenatal and with children or with families?
So just to get back to what I wanted to add to your focusing on the inner, because I forgot to add that. Yeah. I had done that before, and actually it was at my yoga training.
Which is what?
At Breathe for Change in Madison, which was my 200-hour.
Okay.
We did the yoga training, and then we also did transformational workshops, which was really powerful, and one of them was the inner child. And so I know what you're talking about when you feel that. Yeah. When you feel that shift. A lot comes up, and you have to hold so much space for so many people, including yourself. So, I think that's so key to people's healing is exploring their childhood. So,
one of the most important. It's just knowing that our subconscious is programmed from what I've recently learned, the third trimester in the womb until age 7. And then we take that with us and we act out of that programming unless we consciously sit with ourselves, notice, become aware, and do things like you talked about on a daily basis, facing your fear and talking yourself through it, like being your own therapist, right?
Yeah.
It's hard.
You're your best teacher.
Yes.
So back to what I do. So, I always reflect on this because often I'm like, okay, I'm a prenatal yoga teacher. And I'm like, oh yeah, and I work with kids. Like that always pops up. And so, yeah, I feel like I have a lot of passions and focus, and it really does start with the child. So if you can create that foundation for children, they're going to have all these wonderful tools as they grow up, and they're not going to have to experience what we've gone through, what your story. We probably could, if we had those tools when we were younger,
right,
maybe things could have shifted. We would have been more aware of our choices
sooner.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's why I've chosen to work with kids. And I remember as a child just feeling anxious but not being able to put a label on that. I didn't know I was feeling anxiety. I was a hypochondriac. And people were just like, oh, she just wants attention. But I would think of every little thing to, like, do I have cancer? Do I have lung cancer? Do I have a brain tumor? And I would act it out. I would really feel like I had lung cancer, and I would wake my grandmother up. I can't breathe. But everyone's like, oh, she just wants attention. Just leave her alone. She just wants attention. But to me, it was living. It was real.
Yeah.
So as I dove more into this work, I realized what I had was anxiety. So that is what hypochondria is. It's anxiety, just in a different form. We all have different forms of anxiety. So I'm like, I don't want kids to have to go through that, and I don't want my own kids to have to go through that. And if I had these tools today, I probably didn't have to go through all of that anxiety, because that actually followed me for years and years and years. And so it's really important for me to go into the schools to give the kids these tools so they don't have to feel anxiety, they don't have to feel isolated, they don't have to feel alone. A lot of kids that I've seen also come from a dysfunctional home, which is common. Dysfunction is kind of funny because we tend to push dysfunction away, but if we reflect, there's probably some kind of dysfunction in
every family.
And exactly, in our lives.
Yeah.
But depending on the circumstance, some of us may experience less dysfunction. Some of us may experience dysfunction every time we walk in the door at home. And it's a lonely place. It's alienating. You don't know what's tomorrow going to be like. And so, I want to give these kids these tools just to relax themselves and to know when they're feeling angry, when they're feeling anxious, when they're feeling sad. Because then they take all this stuff, if they're in a school, they take all of this to the school and they act out. Mm-hmm. And that's when they project. It also affects other kids. They either get bullied or so-and-so said this to me, and then those kids bring this home. Mm-hmm. And it's just a downward spiral from there.
So what ages are you working with mostly?
So right now I say that I work from the time somebody conceives, since I work with pregnant women, and I also work with some women going through fertility. So, and that is why I work with pregnant women, is so they can connect with their child at an early age.
Cool.
Yeah. So right now I'm actively working with as small as, if you take the pregnant women out, as small as 2 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's so adorable. I tell my kids and my husband, I do it twice a week. I come home like, oh my gosh, you should see how cute these kids are. And I describe the kids, because where I'm at, I don't feel comfortable taking pictures and like, look how cute these kids are. Right. Even though I'm just like, oh my God, if people could see these 2-year-olds, it's nuts. So in the beginning, they just kind of look at me when you first start working with them, and they're amused. They're just like, what is this? And they might be playing, they might seem distracted, but they're still listening, and they still are taking in everything I'm teaching them, because they'll come back and they'll sing a song to me that I was just singing to them. I'm like, see, they really are absorbing everything. It just makes me so happy. Mm-hmm. And so the more it usually takes 3 to 4 times before they just naturally start doing it on their own. So yesterday, I turned over, and this tiny, tiny little 3-year-old, he had his hands like this, and he had his eyes closed, and he's like, because I really try to focus on that breath and exaggerate the breath so they know what I'm talking about. So the 2-year-olds get it. I had the 2-year-olds on Monday last week do a sun salutation, which is kid appropriate. It's not the same. It doesn't look like what you and I would do. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be quiet right now. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to act like a centipede. I'm not going to act like a snake. We're going to be really quiet, and we're going to do the sun dance. And they did it. And it was amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I
it's
wish I could see
I
this.
know.
I have a nephew that's 2, and I can't even imagine him doing it.
And nobody can. I mean,
Right.
the teachers, when I first walked in, they're like, I heard you were coming, but I just don't understand how they're going to do yoga. Like, just like anything else. You've taught them how to get in line. You've taught them to put their lunch away.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you're so right. They're absorbing everything, even when you think, I mean, that can go throughout, daily life. Mm-hmm. When you think they're not paying attention, that is why that time frame is so crucial,
Mm-hmm.
is because they're almost in a state of just absorbing, observing, and almost hypnosis. That's what I've heard people refer to it as, is like they're just in a state of learning how to be a human from the people around them.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that's all they have to work with.
Yes, and they look to us to regulate them, especially their parents, because they do not have that ability to fully regulate themselves, especially if they come from a home that is completely stressed. They're not being given those tools as early as, let's say, the 9th month when they're born.
Right.
That's when those nerves start developing, the connection, and, oh, mom's calm, so I'll be calm. And that just keeps growing and growing. So and I think what I've read is from newborn to 5 years old, if you're not giving your children those tools, then that is when you're going to see more anxiety in your children, more depression, more of the mental health issues.
So it's hard because I'm sure the people, like, just naturally, the people that are bringing their 2 or 3-year-olds or older into you are probably also the ones doing yoga themselves, right? And not that the children don't need to come in, I'm sure that they do, but the children that need it the most, that have the most problematic households, don't have the type of parents that are going to bring them to a yoga studio, right?
Yeah, well, ironically, there are some parents that practice themselves that will bring their kids, and then there's parents, and then there's some kids that I don't know because I'll work at a center, so I don't know who's doing what. Kids will tell me, my aunt has a yoga mat, so I'll know when they've been exposed to it at home. But then there's cases, and I've seen it, where just parents don't have any interest in doing any of it, and it's just for the children. And so when I go to schools, I'll tell teachers and even principals, this is not going to work unless you're embodying this as well. So if I'm in here and I'm teaching this, I am highly recommending that you're doing this with us too. Yeah. And because that's very common for a lot of people to do that. Like, okay, you need to meditate. You need the mindful breathing exercises. And then we don't do them. So, and
that's
the kids
so
know.
important. Of course. They literally look at their teacher or at their parent or at whoever's the authority figure or the adult to be like, well, what's their facial expression? What's their breathing like? Are they doing the yoga? So that's so cool that you encourage the teachers and the principals to do it too.
Yeah. And I definitely, there hasn't been any educators or care providers when they do come into the room with their kids that I haven't seen them not do it. They'll even do it if they're just not even dressed to do it. So
that's really cool.
Yeah.
And that's cool that you're kind of infiltrating into the system that's there, because I guess that's what I was getting at, is that some kids that need it might not have the parents that bring them to the studio, but if you go into the school, then you're kind of reaching those that maybe wouldn't have had access otherwise.
Yes, I'm always giving the kids homework. It's like, okay, this is the only homework you have. You go home and you practice these breathing exercises, and you tell whoever, your aunt, your mom, whoever's taking care of you. Right.
That's really cool. Yeah. So do you do this with your children?
Yes, I do. So it's really interesting. But I have the same issues as everybody else when they're raising kids, and people are like, oh, you must be really calm with your kids. Okay, no, I will raise my voice a lot, but then I guess the difference is I check myself. Okay, I just raised my voice, and that may have sounded really harsh. So I'll go back to them, and we'll connect. We'll talk about it, and we'll work through it. As where there might be a situation where it may never be talked about at all. So I'm always just checking in. I'm checking in with them. But they started meditating. Well, I'm not even going to say meditating, because it's really not a meditation. I just feel like it's vastly different when you're just mindful breathing than a meditation. But they started 2 years old. doing it. And with my first one, I did a lot of yoga, but there was no prenatal yoga in Rockford with my first, and I had to just completely bow out of a studio because people were just like, well, you just practice and listen to your body. And that just didn't feel good enough for me. I was like, well, listen to my body. Like, my body, might want to, go into a deep warrior too.
Yeah.
And maybe I shouldn't be doing that.
Right.
I was really self-conscious. Just protective of my baby, because I was told that I wasn't going to be able to have a child possibly.
Oh, wow.
And if I did, and with my first child, I was told that I might not be able to carry it full term, or he would die.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, I really need this for myself. Yes. Yeah. It was a lot of anxiety. I had a really good pregnancy, though, despite what everybody had warned me about. But there was nowhere I could go. So I bought a DVD and did prenatal. So it's not even funny, but because I wasn't with somebody that could say, okay, your hormones are allowing you to feel like you can stretch further. And I'm really not. I should only stretch where I've always stretched before, but I would even go further than that because my body was able to do that. So when you're pregnant, you have a hormone called relaxin, and it makes you feel like you can do a lot of great things during yoga, but it's preparing you for labor, and that's when you're going to use it.
Right.
So I ended up with some hip pain, and it carried me through when I was birthing my child. So I prepared for a completely natural labor with no meds. I almost felt like I couldn't get through it because of that pain, which was due to all these crazy stretches in my own home doing yoga. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to become a prenatal yoga teacher, because I'm sure there's a lot of moms that are going through the same thing.
Wow.
That I went through. So
create what you wish existed.
Exactly. And there was somebody that was trained in prenatal Pilates, and I was so excited to do that. And then she decided she was moving. So I was like, okay.
This is needed.
Yeah.
Wow. And are there more now that you've created yours, or you're still one of the main?
Oh, no, I'm the main one. Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I know that I have a lot of, most of my listeners are women, and a lot of them are moms, but some of them are currently pregnant, some of them maybe soon. So it's cool that they have you as a resource.
Yeah. And I'm just starting to market it. I just feel like with the journey that I had gone through, because I went and became trained, and then I don't think we mentioned that my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and so people were calling me, well, when are you going to start your classes? When are you going to start your classes? And I'm like, okay, well, whoever knows about them can just come. I can't go beyond. It's just like word, like everything's just been word of mouth right now.
Yeah, which has seemed like it's been a lot still, right? It's been pretty consistent.
Yeah,
just that way.
Exactly. And hopefully, I'm just starting to get into that marketing aspect.
Right.
Like, oh, I have a studio, because people are like, why people are coming to you. You should tell them and market it. No. Because
it's working for you, then it's...
Yeah. And then, the thing is, it's like you become, and I was just sharing this with somebody, like when things keep happening to you, you just expect more to happen. And so I think the last time I was supposed to come here and meet with you, my stepmom had died. And I was like, I can't go on air when I'm grieving. Like, it'll be more like a therapy session probably, and I'll just break down. But after that, as I said, I told you, like, I'm just going to give it time. I'll be okay in a few weeks. And I know myself enough that I needed to face things and just deal with that. But then I also needed to remind myself and wake up to the fact that bad things aren't going to keep happening to me. And things will happen. It happens to all of us. We have no control, but it's obviously the way we deal with them and approach the situation. But everything was so extreme this year. I was waiting for the next extreme thing to happen. I had to tell myself, okay, this is enough of this thinking.
Yeah.
You gotta, even though you're still out there teaching, even though this, people are coming into your studio, you need to rise up now. Like, no more playing small.
Wow.
So, yeah. But it took a lot of self-talk.
Yeah, I bet. I
Yeah.
mean, because you're not talking about small things, you know, because our minds can create that, like, oh, I spilled my coffee. Great. Now the next thing, oh, I'm late to work. Great. Where's the next thing? And that mindset will, whether it attracts bad things in or you just are in that fear constantly, neither one is good, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So the expectation of something bad happening is just as bad, if not worse, than the bad thing actually happening, because you're imagining it happening.
Exactly.
And then you are talking about, you know, very difficult, painful things. And even then you said, okay, I'm not going to sit around and wait for that next bad thing to happen. I'm going to just be here now, and whatever happens, I will handle it, because you're strong enough to do so.
Yeah.
And you've proven that to yourself over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you share with us a little bit then your journey of your husband being diagnosed with cancer and just all the things that brings? I mean, whether that is anger or confusion, fear, obviously, maybe gratitude. What are all the emotions that you have gone through, and how are you doing now that you're at the place with that you are?
So, so last June, when I opened up the studio, June 12th, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. So we did not ever once think he had cancer. So probably a year and a half before he was diagnosed, maybe even a little longer, there were minor symptoms, which we called minor because they hadn't been full-blown yet. And part of my story, which I don't even focus on anymore because my husband had cancer, and I'm not diminishing chronic illness at all, because often all the attention goes to something like cancer when somebody with chronic illness, it may never go away, ever go away, and you have to manage this. So I totally am on that journey myself. So, but because I had gone through Hashimoto's and go through Hashimoto's, when my husband was experiencing symptoms, his bowel movements changed, his diet changed. I was just like, oh, maybe this is just Crohn's or ulcerative colitis. Maybe you have celiac. Like, I just went through all these things that we hear a lot about lately.
Yeah.
And we even went to a naturopath, and, she also just put him on an anti-inflammatory diet. And we just kind of felt like, we've got this. I did it for myself. I can do it for you.
Yeah.
But never once did he think, like, I should go get a colonoscopy. So usually they say, get a colonoscopy 50 or over. And he was only 46 years old. Let me make sure that, 46. So, but it just eventually got so bad. I know, blood in your stool. He looked frail. He looked like death. He couldn't do anything. Like, I remember Mother's Day a year ago, we just had Mother's Day. I'm like, oh my gosh, a year ago, my husband always gets me things to garden. And we did. We went to a nursery to get a bunch of flowers last year. And he's like, I don't know how we're going to do this. And I remember just that day being so painful because I knew something was wrong. But I also didn't want to face it. I have my grandmother died of cancer, and she raised me. So it was like having a mother die. And I remember just praying every single day that I would never have to go through this with a loved one. And that's also part of my trauma, is protecting my kids, thinking I'm going to lose them. So I'm like, okay, my kids didn't get it, but my husband's got it. So we found out, we ended up going to get his colonoscopy because we're just like, okay, this is our last resort. You have to get a colonoscopy. Like, there's no way out of it. And we got in, and that day, he was in getting the colonoscopy, and I was in the waiting room. And all of a sudden, I just got like a pang in my heart. And then the person came out and said, okay, your husband's ready. You can come back. And in my head, I'm like, this isn't good. Like, I already knew it just wasn't good. And so we went back there, and the doctor said, you have cancer, Jason. He said it very humbly, but I think we were just in such shock. We thought he was going to say, you have Crohn's. You have ulcerative colitis. Like, okay, here's the next step. It was really shocking.
So that was a year ago.
Not even, almost a year ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Close to where you opened
Yeah.
your business.
Yes. And so that'll be our open house this year's June 12th, just to change that memory. Yeah.
So now, almost a year later, he went through different procedures. He's healing now.
Yes. And so with anybody that's gone through cancer, there's always something new you find out. Like first they tell you, well, you might not need to go through chemo or radiation. He had to go through chemo, and we were prepared for radiation. Oh, okay, you did so well, you don't have to go through radiation. But just along the way, along the journeys, things always change. Like, you're just going to have surgery right away, we were told, and that's it. And then I remember just really almost passing out. We were in Madison, and the surgeon said, okay, based on your MRI, it looks like you have stage 3 cancer. And we thought we were at stage 1 the whole time. We thought we just hadn't made it in the shade. And so when they said that, I think I just went green. Like, I was just like, are you kidding me? And you will have to go through chemotherapy. And I was just imagining this journey. And so at that point, I just said, I can't be in here anymore. It's just like all of a sudden it turned into like, okay, this is about me. Like, I gotta go. And so the doctor's like, can you please follow her out? We need to make sure she's okay. And then she did walk me out. I just turned in there, so I'm like, I know what I need to do. I need air, I need to breathe, I need to be left alone. And then just from there, you know what, there's no looking into the future. Like, there's been a couple times during that journey where I felt like, is he gonna make it? But, honestly, the majority of time, like, just intuitively, I knew he was going to make it. And he also knew it, too. And when I talked to my kids, they're like, you know what? I always felt Dad was going to make it. And so I think we just all carried that. And the teachers at my son's school, they're just like, you know what? They don't seem to. They seem like they're doing really well. And, well, we talk to them a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't hide anything from them. And so I think that really helped them on their journey with seeing their dad.
Yeah.
We lost our husband, we lost our dad during chemotherapy, which just, he was just physically there, just a body. He was checked out completely.
How long was the time period of that?
From July to October. So he went through 8 chemo treatments. And in the beginning of the chemo treatment, my husband is super resilient, super strong mind. And I'm like, okay, we've got this. We're going to nail this. And he loves to build. He's a woodworker. So he made my furniture in my yoga studio on the second treatment. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have furniture. And then it ended. So the more you do chemo, the more it builds up to the point where you're gone. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, yeah.
I'm so curious too, because, I know that the journey you've gone through with healing yourself, and through eating well, and like you said, an anti-inflammatory diet and meditation and yoga. What were your feelings toward, we're going to have to do chemo and not take an alternative route, right? Because I'm sure there's so many emotions, and maybe even in the realm you're in, did you feel like there was going to be judgment? Did you feel judgment towards yourself? What were all the emotions? Because it's not cut and dry, right? I know that there have been people that have healed themselves naturally. I know there have been people who have healed themselves naturally paired with chemo or radiation. It's complicated, and I'm sure it's really hard to make those decisions when you're faced with the fear of losing the person that you love. So what was that like?
Well, honestly, when I reflect on this journey, I would have gone for the colonoscopy for him. I would have pushed him to do that a lot sooner. We did all the natural stuff, and it's just like, in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with lupus, and I reversed it through all natural means. So anything that would come, we're taking the natural approach. But when he was diagnosed with cancer, and I have people that I read about, I cured myself from colon cancer. It just didn't feel like an option to go the natural route. However, we did get a naturopath that specialized in oncology. And we visited her in Madison, and she gave us all the right instructions. And I think that is how he bounced back so quickly. But we still did everything the oncologist said. We had a lot of faith in our oncologist. We had a lot of faith in our surgeons. All of the Western medicine people, we put all our faith to. Will we question? Did we question things? Of course. Did we do our research? Of course. Every decision was informed. Yeah. So I felt like we've exhausted our natural approach.
Right.
So yeah, I'm just like, we did all that.
Right.
Yeah, we juiced care. We did everything. So of course, I did think about that. I did think about my profession.
Right.
And how I put myself out there, how I've helped myself. Yeah, you asked all the right questions. I went through that whole thing.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, and like you said, it's like then there comes a time where it's like you have to really figure out what's going to heal him. And it's not like you said, okay, I'm going to forget everything I know about the natural route, meaning what's best, right? It's not like you're like, okay, we're going to go take you to McDonald's, get a Big Mac meal, and do chemo, right? It's not like you went the opposite direction. It's like using the power of Western medicine paired with the naturopath and helping him then heal himself from the toxicity of something like chemotherapy, but using chemo for its power if, that's what needed to happen. And then
exactly,
how is he today?
Yeah, he's doing really good. I guess his glow has come back. I mean, he just lost, he used to have pretty broad, he was a swimmer for many years, so his shoulders really broad, muscles, and that just wasn't there. And we're just like, we're gonna make this happen again. I mean, we don't need muscles and all of that, but we just want your health back. So he just started truly working out, breaking a sweat last week at the Y.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So he came home, he's like, oh my gosh, while I was on the elliptical machine, I just felt something on my body. And I was like, what on earth is that? And he's like, oh, and it dawned on me, it's sweat. So I was like, yeah. So as he said, it was just really weird. And he has worked out even since that moment, and he'll be worn out. He'll be worn out. And last night I did notice with this chemo, he did not lose. He lost hair, but not to the point of balding, because it was a different cocktail. So, and I've written about this before, that it's weird when you are going through chemotherapy and you don't lose your hair, people think you're not sick. And so they treat you like you're not sick, when you really still need to give them that space to rest and relax or do whatever they need to do.
Of course.
Yeah, so that was weird. It's very common with people with colon cancer, though, to have that kind of treatment. But he did lose hair, and he has a lot of hair, but not to the point of balding. But his hair has grown back, and it's super curly. So I was just kind of like, I've never seen your hair this curly. He's curly hair, but it's really curly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny. So he's like a whole new version of himself in a way.
Yeah, and it's easy to go back to old ways to possibly what you think caused the cancer, and so you have to check in with yourself. Is this really good for me? Is this the route that I want to take?
Right. Do you feel comfortable sharing as an example of what you're talking about? Stress.
Not slowing down. And, I was just talking to somebody in their 70s, and a yoga student, and I was just like, you know what? I always tell myself I need to slow down and I need to do less. But I always end up doing more because, when you're passionate about something, that's the route you take, and that means more. Or maybe it doesn't, but we'll explore that. Right. And she's also very passionate about her work, and she's like, you know what? I've told myself that my whole life that I need to slow down, but I must really like what I do because I've never slowed down. So maybe it's just accepting that you just keep going.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that is my husband. Like, when I first met him, okay, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I'm going to read the paper, have my coffee, I'll go work out. I've always taken that approach to life. And then when I met him, which was 17 years ago, he's like, I'm hitting the floor running.
Yeah.
So that's him. And so I have to remind him, okay, do you really think you should be doing this?
Right.
He used to think that you could get just 4 hours of sleep and function.
Right.
And we all know that sleep is your best medicine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So it's just changing those things, because when you feel better, and like I said, that I went, and I go through extreme bouts of dealing with Hashimoto's, and I have to watch myself, how much I put myself out there, because then it bubbles up, okay, I can't do it anymore. I have to go to sleep now. But it's easy when you've gone through a flare and not feel like you're going from, I can't do anything, and then to just feeling that just little bit of energy and not feeling that glaze over your eyes like you need to sleep. Like, okay, I can do things. I know that feeling. But you got to wait till you're fully
pace yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess that little bit of gratitude that I had mentioned earlier, and I'd love for you to kind of, when we start to wrap this up, just really share with me maybe some of the gifts that you've gotten from the last year of your life. And I only say that because even like when I have, and I don't get sick that often anymore since I've tried to consciously take care of myself. But when I do, even if it's for a day, then all of a sudden I am smacked in the face with gratitude of feeling well, because we don't even notice that we feel well. Like right now, I'm well, but I haven't been like, oh my God, I'm well today. I don't have the flu or I don't have cancer until we are faced with that. So what gifts, if any, have you gathered, or maybe you're currently still kind of in it, so maybe you haven't fully received those yet, but what has come positive from the struggles over the last year?
Yeah, I think reminding yourself of being grateful. Because like I said, the minute you're feeling okay. So I'm always reminded, if there's something like, okay, why did you do this? I'll tell my husband, why did you leave this out on the counter? And then a little bit later, I'm so happy you're alive. Like that just seemed like so small compared to the grand scheme of things. Yeah. Just having him around. Sometimes I will look at him and I'm like, what if I did lose him? And then, but I didn't lose him. And I think just reminding myself how resilient we really are. We all are, if we tap into that. And just the power of, again, self-talk. Like, I'm grateful that I had all these tools in my house and my husband too. It just kind of, he has the same tools, and we just grateful that we had those to get us through this. Because I don't think, had I not gone through everything that I did, I think I would have been a mess with this whole cancer journey. And I don't honestly know how grateful I would be right now. It's like those things, the things that I already went through were so extreme and made me that much stronger to deal with finding out that he had cancer. So in retrospect, I am just grateful for what I've had, even though it does seem extreme. But I'm also, and this also keeps coming up, impermanence. And in accepting impermanence. So for me, you would have thought that my head would have been in yoga books. Like when I was going through all of this, I was reading about death and learning how to accept death, even though I knew he was going to be okay. And I'm still exploring this because most of my life has been dealing with loss and impermanence. And that is what's created my trauma in life. So here, the universe gave me something to deal with again. And this time, I feel like I'm really facing it. And my husband and I talk about it all the time, like permanence versus impermanence and the beauty that death is. And when you read about people dying, when you hear about their experiences or talk to people that are dying, they're living in the moment. And it's really one of the most beautiful experiences you can have. But instead, our culture, of course, we don't want to deal with this. We're losing people here. But thinking about how that person feels when they've accepted their death. It's a beautiful thing. So in that regard, I'm really grateful that I went through this because then I don't have to fear impermanence as this horrible thing, like just learning to adapt and adjust. And I think if we all learn how to adapt and adjust to that loss, that causes a lot of us a lot of stress in life and anxiety. Like my kids tell me, Mom, I don't want to see you die. They tell me that a lot. Will Dad have cancer again? So we talk about it. We just talk about it. And I remember as a child, because like I said, my grandmother died and she raised me. And I would say, can you take me with you? And she would say, yes. So when she died, I was like, hello? Why am I still here? Aww. Yeah, why didn't you take me with you? So I felt really abandoned to somebody that was dying. Like, yeah, I feel like explaining that and just exploring it as an adult or even as a child. That's something that you have to think about every day. But we all have to go through it. It's something we all have to go through.
It's so wild to me, like this conversation, this topic, my boyfriend and I were just talking about last night. And some recent events kind of brought it back up to the surface, but it's almost inevitable that those events, whether you know the person personally or not, it will always come up to remind you that there is impermanence, and that death is the most universal thing amongst humans. And if we can't discuss it openly, then we are robbing ourselves of that beauty of acceptance, of freedom, because there's nothing that we fear more than death ourselves and losing the ones that we love. So I love that you brought this up, because it's so hard to think about, to talk about, to feel, yet it's so like freeing when you finally do.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to die, but if anything else comes up, like my husband's like, you know what, I got to the point, like this is what he said, I got to the point where, okay, then I do die. If this is what the universe wants, then I'll accept death. But that's not how he lived his life every day during cancer. And so, and I think that's a lesson for all of us. We should all try to, and it's such a cliche, live your day like it's your last day.
Right. But it definitely could be.
Yeah, at any moment.
I love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
What a gift to have you here today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm going to link everything for everyone so they can find you, especially if they're in the Rockford area, they want to come practice with you, or have you come to their school, or whatever it is that they feel called to connect with you. Maybe even just follow you online.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So to ask you my last two questions I ask everyone on the show, what is one thing that you want more of in your life? And then what is one thing that you're currently coming clean of?
What I want more of in my life, and I think this is really common with mothers, I just want time to read a novel. Like my child, every night he wants me to read The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. And my other son's already read it, and now my 8-year-old is like, you have to read this book. So he's just like, I'm leaving it right here for you. But every night I'm reading something about, meditation, or, prenatal yoga, postpartum, like all that stuff. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I have to prepare for A, B, and C. So yeah, so just more time to read a novel. I don't know. In that world, I just feel like my life would be so much more peaceful.
Did you used to read novels?
Yeah, I've always loved reading.
Okay.
But I love reading real life.
Okay.
Yeah, I love reading memoirs.
Okay,
and so in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this memoir. But he's like, you need to read The Graveyard Book. You haven't finished the whole Harry Potter series, Mom. Like, when are you going to do that?
Wow.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so learning to carve out that time somehow for yourself, even if it's in like really small increments.
Yes,
maybe
exactly.
Somehow, I mean,
I know. And it seems so trivial and small, but I just feel like it would change my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just feels like, I can read a novel.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you can make it happen, I think. And by speaking it out, now it's like launching a rocket of desire.
Yes.
It will come.
Manifesting, for sure.
Yes. And then one thing that you're coming clean of, so basically something you're trying to let go of or do less of, something that no longer serves you, that you are in the process of letting go.
So what we talked about in the beginning is feeling bad about other people's feelings. Just like, how am I going to make that person feel? Like putting the other person first, like disappointment, or if I tell this person how I really feel, how are they going to feel? But so coming clean of that, like, okay, but am I going to feel better because I put myself first? Like I do this with just relationships, both professionally and personally, and it doesn't serve me. So it's just checking in with yourself. Like, how would I feel if I kindly told this person that they are not serving me? Their actions are not serving me in this way anymore. Or you don't even need to tell them. Just do whatever you have to do, and then just... And because in my head, I'm like, okay, if I say that or do that, they might think it's directed to them, but it's not. And so I'm always just thinking about how that other person's going to feel. Yeah. So that's what and that's really hard. And I think it's hard for a lot of women, and I don't call it, like a lot of people are like, oh, so many women are codependent. It's not a codependency. It's not like I'm trying to fully take care of this person and not letting themselves empower themselves, but it's empowering myself.
I love that. Yeah. Me too. It's endless, but I think it's like a muscle you can train. It's like,
yes,
I'm gonna do this thing even if I'm afraid of disappointing this person, telling them no, or just simply doing something that's in my best interest and not thinking about pleasing the other person first.
Yes,
taking them into consideration always, and not being rude or mean or spiteful, but going, if this is best for me, I'm going to do it even if it might disappoint someone else. But that's hard.
Yeah, and there's guilt that can come with it.
Yeah.
Some people might make you feel guilty, but in the end, it's you that you're taking care of.
Yeah, I love that. Well, this was wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And again, thank you for being so patient.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you again. We'll see you all next time on Coming Clean. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy life to hang out with me and my guest. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please feel free to share it with a friend, anyone who you think could benefit from this conversation. And also send me a message or a comment or an email, wherever you find me. Connect with me and let me know, why did you enjoy this episode? Did you have any aha moments? Were there any times where you heard us say something that you didn't even think about before? Just let me know so that I know that you're listening, and I just really appreciate your feedback. So I look forward to talking to you all next time. Thanks again. Bye.